Hello viewers, I welcome you to this special presentation. Given the present ravaging effect of the COVID-19 pandemic, it became not very easy for scholars to converge together for this year's Management Science Summit. But we appreciate the effort of the organizing team for providing this platform through which scholars across the world can present their papers. It is on this note I present my own paper. My name is Dr. Amaefule Leonard Ifeanyi. Dr. Amaefule is a lecturer in the Department of Accountancy, Imo State University Owerri, Nigeria. My phone number and contact address have been provided on the platform. Now the topic of the presentation is 2007 Procurement Act and Economic Growth of Nigeria, a pre-post empirical evaluation. As a matter of introduction, we want to observe that until 2007, Nigeria did not have any specific regulation on public procurement. As such, the procurement activities of the public sector of Nigeria were associated with gross wastages caused by misprocurements and seemingly misappropriations, leaving a negative effect on the economic growth of the nation. And this led to the enactment of the 2007 Public Procurement Act. Subsequently, a great deal of positive difference was expected in government's procurement of goods and services in view of this enactment, against the backdrop of their resultant effect on the nation's economic development and growth index. But the worry is, can we affirm empirically that this Procurement Act and the associated impact on the economy is supported by any cogent empirical evidence? Notably, government procurement could take the form of capital or recurrent acquisition of goods or services in the form of administration, economic services, social community services, and transfers. However, this study focuses on the aspect of government procurement that directly engenders economic growth. Hence, the scope of the study is limited to government procurement for economic services and social community services. And given the drive for the study's main objective is to determine the impact of federal government's procurement on the Nigeria's economic growth during the pre- and post-2007 Procurement Act periods. And from the main objective, the following specific objectives of the study have been developed. Number one, to evaluate the impact of federal government capital procurement of economic services on the real gross domestic product of Nigeria during the pre- and post-Public Procurement Act periods. Secondly, to ascertain the impact of federal government capital procurement of social community services on real gross domestic product of Nigeria during the pre- and post-Public Procurement Act periods. And then thirdly, to draw a comparison of the results of the two periods. To further demonstrate the direction of the variables of the study, we on this slide present what we call the conceptual framework. So on the conceptual framework, we have a diagram that clearly specifies the two periods that the study covers. On the one hand, we have the pre-Public Procurement Act era, which spans from 1997 to 2007. And on the other hand, we have the post-Public Procurement era, spanning from 2008 to 2018. So altogether, this study covers a period from 1997 to 2018. Now, on each of this period, two main variables have been identified in the study, which are the federal government capital procurement, indicated on this framework with the acronym FGCP, and the economic growth indicated with the acronym EG. The federal government capital procurement has two proxies. The two proxies, which are the independent variables of the study, are federal government capital procurement for economic services and federal government capital procurement for social community services. These two variables have been indicated on this framework as FGC PES and the FGC PSCS. These are the two proxies for the independent variable federal government capital procurement. And the dependent variable of the study, which is the economic growth, is proxied with real gross domestic product. And as it is with the pre-PPA era, so it is with the post-PPA era. So when we talk about the federal government capital procurement, we mean the government expenses that has to do with activities which benefit derivable therefrom last for more than 1 year. So federal government expenses that the benefit that the people derive from such investment of government last for more than 1 fiscal year is what we refer to as federal government capital procurement. And like we've noted on the introduction, that this federal government capital procurement can take the form of administration, economic services, social community services, and transfer. However, in this study, as have been identified, we are taking these two components of federal government capital procurement, which are economic services and social community services. And so federal government capital procurement for economic services represent those expenses and investment of government on activities that engender economic growth, that engender and spur economic activities by the people. Those activities that enhance the economic lifestyle of the people are what we refer to as government capital expenditure on economic activities. Example of such activities are government expenditure on constructions, road construction, bridge constructions, construction of power, dams, and all that. Those are examples of federal government capital procurement for economic services. And when we talk about social community services, we refer to those government expenses on activities that enhance the social life of the people. Example of that is when government provide school blocks and procures textbooks and the other learning materials for the school. And now when there is provision of hospitals and the hospital equipment, those are under that category of government expenditure, which is referred to as social community services, because they enhance the social welfare of the people. Now, these are the two independent variables, and if you look at the framework, the two arrows are pointing to the dependent variable, indicating the impact of these variables on the dependent variable. And the dependent variable, like we said before, is the real gross domestic product, which is the gross domestic product that has adjusted the effect of inflation in the economy. And gross domestic product is simply the value of total goods and services provided in a country. Now, moving to the next slide, which is model specification. The model specification here is indicating the two periods that we have demonstrated on the framework. Now we have the two periods, the pre and post PPA era. Now the two models here, each of them, the first one stands for the first period and the second one stand for the second period. The indices as identified on the framework have been also represented here. We have the real gross domestic product, which is the dependent variable on the left-hand side, and we have the federal government capital procurement for economic services and federal government capital procurement for social community services on the right-hand side of the equations. And these two are the independent variables of the study. And now we have lambda 0, which is the intercept of the regression line. We have lambda 1 and lambda 2 representing the coefficients of the two independent variables. And now we have the error term, which measures the deviation from the mean of the study. Now, moving to the next slide, we have data presentation for the two periods. The first period is the one shown on the current slide, which is data presentation for pre-PPA era. And the data span from 1997 to 2007. And the source of this data is from Central Bank of Nigeria Statistical Bulletin. Now, this current slide presents the data used for the post-Public Procurement Act era, which spans from 2007 to 2018, and the source is also CBN Statistical Bulletin for the various years. The current slide that shows now is the result of the regression analysis for the first model, which is developed for the pre-PPA era. And quickly, let's identify some important parameters on this result. First of all, we found that the analysis is for the pre period, like I've said, and the dependent variable is real gross domestic product. And then the included observation is 11 years for that period. Now, the variables of the study, the result have shown the two independent variables, pre-ES, which is pre-economic services, and pre-social community services. Our area of interest is on the probability of the t-statistics of the two independent variables. For the first one, pre-ES, the probability value is 0.58, which is far greater than the level of significance of 0.05. Therefore, we deduce from that result that government procurement, capital procurement for economic services during the pre-PPA era has no significant impact on the dependent variable real gross domestic product for that period. Real gross domestic product for that period. And looking at the coefficient column, we found that the coefficient of that very variable is minus 12.34, indicating a negative impact of that independent variable on the dependent variable real GDP. However, because of the insignificant nature of that result, the issue of the negative impact is swallowed up. So our takeaway from that result is that the government capital procurement for economic services has no significant impact on the real gross domestic product of Nigeria during the pre-PPA era. For the second independent variable, the probability value is 0.00, which is less than the significant level of 0.05, indicating a positive impact. And the coefficient value is 173. That is 173.48, which is a positive result. Therefore, we can affirm from that result that the federal government capital procurement for social community services has significant positive impact on real gross domestic product of Nigeria during the pre-Public Procurement Act era. Okay, now we can also make some other deductions from the result, like the R-square value of 0.71 approximate indicates the joint effect of the two independent variables on the dependent variables. So we can affirm from there that federal government capital procurement for economic services and for social community services jointly affects the real gross domestic product of Nigeria up to 71%, and the rest is caused by other factors that are not captured in this model. Also, this affirmation is supported by the probability value of F statistic, which is 0.00, indicating a joint significant effect of the two independent variables on the dependent variable. Now, finally, the Dubbin-Watson statistics show the result of 1.84, which is close to 2, as the rule of thumb is that the result of that of the Dubbin-Watson statistics should be 2 for it to confirm the validity of the model and the usability for economic policies. And with this result, we can affirm that the model was rightly specified and that the result of this analysis is reliable. Moving to the next slide presents the result of the regression analysis for the post-Public Procurement Act era. Like in the other result, the dependent variable is real gross domestic product, but now for the post period. And the two independent variables, the post-ES and post-SCS, we go straight to the probability values of these two variables. And from the result we have here, the probability values are all insignificant as their results are greater than the 0.05 level of significance. So both ES and SCS are individually not significant. And for the ES, we have 6.3 as the coefficient and minus 211 as the coefficient of SCS. But in all, we simply conclude from that result that the federal government capital procurement for economic services has no significant impact on the real gross domestic product during the post-PPA era. Also, that the federal government capital procurement for social community services has no significant impact on the real gross domestic product of Nigeria during the post-PPA era. So in all, our takeaway is that while that of the pre has one significant result, that of the post, both independent variables showed insignificant result. Now, from the results as presented in the two tables above, we now have the summary of the entire result. Number one is that the federal government capital procurement for economic services exert no significant impact on real gross domestic product of Nigeria during both periods of pre and post Public Procurement Act. That is to say that when we talk about the period after the enactment of the law, both the federal government capital procurement for economic services and the federal government capital procurement for economic services for both periods rather, none of them showed any significant impact on the real gross domestic product. But for the federal government capital procurement for social community services, this variable exerted significant impact on real gross domestic product during the pre-Public Procurement Act era, while during the post-Public Procurement era, that variable did not show any evidence of significant impact on real gross domestic product. In all, we summarize, therefore, that federal government procurement influenced Nigeria's economic growth better during the pre-Public Procurement Act period than during the post-Public Procurement Act period. Therefore, we conclude on the basis of these the above findings that the problems of the snare pace of economic growth in Nigeria is not a product of lack of laws guiding government's procurement activities, but other factors are simply responsible. How did we make this as this conclusion? It is because we found that um, even after the enactment of the law, which was expected to enhance procurements in the public sector of Nigeria, we found that both activities of government in the area of procurement in the form of economic services and social community services, none of them showed any significant impact on the real gross domestic product of Nigeria. Whereas before the enactment of the law, at least government procurement on social community services exerted significant positive impact on the real gross domestic product of Nigeria. Therefore, we conclude that it's not the issue of lack of laws that is warranting the snare pace of economic growth in Nigeria. Rather, some other factors could have been responsible. And on the basis of that, we recommend that capacity building rather, and reorientation of public procurement officers in particular and public sector officials in general is a sure panacea to bringing about optimum value of public resources allocated for procurement of goods and services in the public sector of Nigeria. Yes, we are recommending capacity building and reorientation because, like we have affirmed, that other factors such as corruption and lack of interest in discharging government official activities could have been responsible other than lack of laws. Therefore, a sure panacea to healing the Nigerian economy and ensuring that the masses and the public obtain value for every expenditure of the government is by reorienting the public officers and particularly the procurement officers and building their capacity to understanding the effect of their actions on the general feelings of the people and the economic growth of the nation at large. Secondly, this paper recommends that there should be a stiffer penalty meted out to defaulters of Public Procurement Act provisions in order to deter further misappropriation of government funds. This is inevitable because that is what will make the people to take every action given to them seriously. So on this note, we thank you for listening to us and God bless you.